Hope you're all well and safe under the circumstances and sane under the circumstances. I guess that's the biggest prayer of all. Stay sane and stay safe during this time. So today I've had an interesting day, pretty much spending most of my day preparing for the evolution talk. I've learned more about evolution than I've ever thought I'd care to know. And I look forward for you guys to be able to join tonight, or you could always listen to a recording that we send out tomorrow morning. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of a new month, the month of Av. We start a new month, the 9 days of mourning. We mourn a story that happened 1900 years ago, almost 2000 years ago, and we mourn for all the issues in our life that haven't materialized, all our dreams that haven't materialized. And I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were giving me very wise advice. They were saying that sometimes you have to let go of the dreams that you thought you'd had and adopt to new dreams. But letting go of the dreams you had is a difficult process, and it's a difficult journey. And it's something that we all need to work on. And right now in COVID, we had very different dreams for what 2020 would look like. And we have to let go of the dreams. And part of the mourning period, any mourning, when you lose a loved one, is letting go of dreams. You know, you thought you had a reality. You thought you would spend another few years with this individual. You thought that you'd spend a lifetime within this individual. You thought that you would do certain things together. And at some stage, you grieve the world that you're never going to have. And that's what a big part of the grieving process is, grieving what we're not going to have, and then accepting what we will have. And during the 3 weeks, what we do is we grieve for our dreams that will never materialize. But interesting, immediately after the 3 weeks, with 3 weeks after that, you get a little break, but 3 weeks after that, you start the month of alow, and then that's the month that leads up to Rosh Hashanah, and then you start up for a new Hebrew year, a new year of having a relationship with God, etc. In other words, before you go build a new year, you have to grieve for the dreams and the year that didn't necessarily materialize the way you wanted to. Grief is a hard topic to talk about. It always is very hard to talk about. I've never enjoyed the conversation about grief. It's heartbreaking. But I want to talk about grief today. Originally, when I spoke about grief in the aftermath of losing my dad, it was the grief of the immediate effect and trying to make sense of lack of closure and all the traumas I had around that period. And now it's 18 months later, and it's been a very exciting, and when I say exciting, I don't necessarily mean positively exciting, but exciting nevertheless, an exciting 18 months. And in this unrecognizable world, I'm finding myself grieving again. There's no question that the single biggest emotion that is right around the whole community, not only in Johannesburg, all over the world, is grieving. The year didn't turn out what we thought it would be. And I've read some very interesting articles from various psychologists and authors who say that the grief that the world is feeling is incredible. Like, we're literally grieving for a world that was. And sometimes the only way to embrace the life we have is to cry about the life we don't have. Not every day, not the whole year, but there are 3 weeks a year, every year, that we grieve for the world that isn't, for a temple that we haven't seen in almost 2,000 years, for a Mashiach that still hasn't come. We grieve for the fact that we're living in a reality that's so not ideal. But right after that, we go and start the Rosh Hashanah, we go into the new year, and we start building the best year we could have under these circumstances. And I think part of the reason that many of us have not necessarily embraced the lessons of Corona and COVID and not been able to find peace is because we haven't allowed ourselves to truly grieve. Not feel sorry for ourselves, but to grieve. That this isn't the year we wanted. God runs the world. And that's why even at a funeral, as we put the body in the ground, the first paragraph we say right after, before we even cover it with earth, we use the words of Job, of Eov, that we quoted in the shir a few weeks ago. Hashem natan v'Hashem lakach. God gave, God took back. He gave us this person, he took them back. Yehi Shem Hashem v'varach me'atav ad olam. May God's name be blessed forever and ever. It's the final words we say just before we put earth. And we kind of have that traumatic bang every time, every funeral you go to. There's no question that the most traumatic thing for the family is that first shovel of earth, usually done by a son. And it makes it feel final. So at the same time that you're told by God to grieve for a week, and grieve for a month, and grieve for a year, you also acknowledge that God runs this world. God gave, God took. But it doesn't mean you don't grieve. And often people think that being a person of faith means not acknowledging the grief and not acknowledging the pain. That doesn't work. Hashem created us as human beings. And as human beings, we have emotions. Doesn't mean we can't control them, but sometimes we have to allow it. Sometimes we have to allow it. And to focus on the world that we planned for that didn't materialize is not an act of betrayal. It's not an act against God. God tells us every year, spend 3 weeks, especially the 9 days which start tonight, and think about the life that you don't have. And focus on the world that hasn't turned out the way you want it to be. And allow yourself to feel, and allow yourself to hurt, and allow yourself to feel the grief. I remember when I lost my dad, the feeling of grief at that time was like somebody ripped something out of my heart. That shock was immense. By now, it's 18 months later, it still hurts, but it's not that feeling. It's just a sadness for a future that didn't happen. You know, a person in the prime of their life and the future that didn't happen. And we grieve our whole life, and yet we manage to move on. But what my message really is now is the time in the Jewish calendar that we grieve. We grieve the fact that this world isn't perfect. And we allow ourselves to feel the pain. So many of us are trying to avoid that pain. Trying to avoid the pain of the loneliness that we're feeling, the sadness that we're feeling, the fear that we're feeling. And for me, the fact that Hashem comes every year and says, here's a few days to just feel it. No judgment. We're going to feel the fact that this world isn't perfect. We're going to feel the fact that the pain is real. We're going to allow ourselves to take in this incredible trauma. Only then could we release those emotions and move on. There's no way that COVID will transform us if we don't first let go of our dreams. Because honestly, let's accept it. 2020 is not the year that we thought it would be. And a lot of your dreams for this year didn't happen. New dreams came into being, and it's fine, and it's beautiful. But a lot of dreams didn't happen. And just accepting that and shedding a tear and feeling the emotion. Now, I used to think, I'm a guy, right? I used to think that crying is weak. Because ultimately, what's crying? Crying is you're sad about something, but you're supposed to be upbeat. You're supposed to be stiff upper lip. And at some stage, you realize that crying is not weakness. Crying is a necessary step. Releasing emotions is a necessary step so that you can then get up strong. But if you don't release that emotion, you won't be able to stand as strong. And I believe that's why the 3 weeks are put in the calendar just before the lead up to Rosh Hashanah. It's because grief and loss for the year that was allows you to now have a rebirth of a new year. The 15th day of the month of Av, it's a holiday. Some of you might know it as a Jewish Romance Day, Valentine's Day, the Tu B'Av, the 15th day of Av. I'm not going to talk about it, whether it is a Valentine's Day or not, but it's a day of love and relationships. And the question that was always asked is, why is the 15th of Av such a celebration? And the answer is because on the 15th day of the month, the lunar month, right? The Jewish calendar follows the moon, the lunar month. On the 15th day of the month, the moon is absolutely complete. And when the moon is complete, it symbolizes Jewish completion. But then that question is, so every month we should have a big celebration on the 15th day of the month. And there are some mystics who do make a commemoration every month on the 15th day of the month when the moon is absolutely full, at least to our vision, make a celebration. But as a Jewish community, the only time we make a celebration of the fact that the month is complete is Av. Interesting, Pesach also starts on the 15th of the month, Sukkot also starts on the 15th of the month, Tu B'Shvat's on the 15th of the month, but it's specifically in the month of Av that we make a focus on the fact that it's the 15th of the month, and it's because it's energies of the moon. Why? The sages explain, because it follows the 9 days. In other words, the 9 days symbolize the Jewish devastation. They symbolize all the pain we've been through, all the breaking that we've been through. And then the 15th day of the month symbolizes that out of the darkness, you have a beautiful new moon. And that's why the light of the 15th of the month of Av, the light that shines on the full day, the full moon, after the 9 days in Tisha B'Av, is the most beautiful light of all. And that's why we turned it into Chag. And that's why the Talmud says that there's no greater Chag in the year besides Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av. Those are the 2 great days of the year. Why? Because this is light that's born out of darkness. Being an optimist doesn't mean that we deny the darkness. It means that we acknowledge the darkness and then allow it to birth something new. Darkness is where light is generated. Famous example that the Talmud gives: if you light a match in a room that's full of light, it doesn't do anything. When you light a match in a dark room, that's what it does. In other words, where's the place that light has its biggest impact in darkness? And often light is born in darkness. We've spoken a few times over the past few months that creativity often comes from a place of depression, a place of darkness, a place of grappling. Judaism has nothing against sadness, but it says use the sadness for something. Let the world become a better place through your darkness. You know, many people suffer with darkness. Many people suffer with mental illness. And we go to therapy, and we go to the psychiatrist, and we get the medicine, etc. That's all important. And I don't mean that to pay lip service. I mean it. It's very important. At the same time, if we can allow our darkness that we grapple with to give birth to a new magic, then we have taken this challenge that God gave us and made it much more powerful. We didn't just push it on the side. We allowed it to birth something new and something beautiful. And that's what I would tell somebody who's struggling with mental illness. I would say, yes, you have to deal with this. And yes, don't let this hinder your life, and do whatever you can to take the right treatment to help you. At the same time, don't only see this as a curse. There is incredible magic waiting to be born in your darkness. Why the world was created that way, I don't know. But there's no question God created that out of dark comes light, that out of a downfall comes greatness, that the biggest rise of the Jewish people happens after our biggest downfall. The destruction of the temple and all of Jewish wisdom, the Talmud and everything gets born. The Holocaust and a rebirth of the Jewish community all across the world and in the Holy Land. Out of darkness always comes light. It's the mechanism of how God made this world. The world starts perfect, then we go down, we crash, and out of the crash, we reach a whole different level of perfect, much greater than the perfect that was. Think of life as stage 1, 2, and 3. Trying to think of how to do this in a way. Okay, stage 1, everything's great. Stage 2, it's terrible. Stage 3, it's great again. Now, which great is bigger, this one or this one? Well, you might say the phone is cooler, but no, this one is bigger. Why? Because it's a light that was earned. It was a darkness that turned into light. It wasn't just the first thing that we had, which was amazing, which then collapsed. No, because that wasn't earned. When we grapple and something's born, it's much more enduring, it's much more powerful, it's much more all-encompassing. I'll give you another example. Someone is very talented, and the world discovers their talent on Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent at the age of 10. I feel bad for all these kids whose talents are discovered at the age of 10. You know why? Because you're going to fly too high without ever tasting darkness. And you're going to fly so high that when you crash, all too often, like happens to celebrities, it's going to kill you. But if you first built resilience, if you first tasted darkness, first grappled, struggled to find your place in this world. I always tell people, I say, you think it's a gift that one of your children has an easy time navigating this world and the other one doesn't. No. The one who doesn't have it easy navigating the world has it much harder, but they have so much more potential because they're struggling to find the way that they and the world fit. And that struggle will give birth to creativity. People who just fit into this world, they're naturally cool, they're naturally successful, they're naturally smooth and slick. Those are not the people that change the world in a good, positive way. It's when you're struggling to fit in and you're desperate to find your way of self-expression. You're desperate to find your way in this world and you don't give up. Obviously, if you give up, that's the worst, but you don't give up, that somehow in that tension, magic is created. And you'll see it. For those of you who've raised many children, you'll see it. Often the kid that you struggled with the most gave you the most nachas. Complicated, but nachas. Because that struggle to find themselves, that struggle to find their identity, the fact that they didn't fit into this world so naturally forced them to dig deep. Think of all the science that's advanced in the last 4 months when it comes to testing, when it comes to building a vaccine. You read what the scientists say. They say what happened in the last 4 months would usually take 40 years. But the darkness, there's tension. Necessity is the mother of all invention. And incredible things are being innovated. In other words, sometimes the world gets reborn. I mean, even World War II, with all its challenges, it built up the American economy, took it out of the recession. It gave America back its optimism. I'm not saying it's a good thing. All I'm saying is that there's no question that there's a strong correlation. Not only a correlation, there's a dependence that darkness gives birth to light. But the first thing you have to do is accept that it's darkness, to grieve it, to feel it, to allow yourself. I've always struggled with these 3 weeks. I'm like, God, seriously, man, the temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago. What do you want from me? You want me to sit there sitting in Tisha B'Av, which is next week, Wednesday night. We're going to have a Zoom Eicha service, and we'll try to have something meaningful after that as well. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try telling you stories about the temple that was destroyed 2,000 years ago and the other one that was destroyed 2,500 years ago. Seriously, why? Because if you don't know what you lost and you don't grieve what was, and you don't go to that place, you won't develop the motivation to do what you're here to do. In other words, you have to dig deep into your struggles to sometimes give birth to light, to think about the world that we want, the world of a temple of God's revelation, of beauty, of peace, and to grieve the fact that the world isn't like that, could then give birth to your decision to make this world better. And maybe my birthday is always the day before Tisha B'Av, my Hebrew birthday, next week, Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. And maybe I've always resonated with this idea because I'm born literally the day before Tisha B'Av. And I think to myself, allow Tisha B'Av to do its thing on you. Allow yourself to feel. Allow yourself to take it in. And then create the magic. Some of us, our lives have turned out better than we thought it would. Some of us, our lives have turned out more difficult than we thought it would. Some of us, it's unimaginably beautiful. We have nachas from our kids. And some of us not. And those whose life hasn't necessarily turned out like a garden of roses can walk around and feel like their life wasn't beautiful. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't restful. It wasn't pleasant. It's true. And we grieve that. At the same time, do we acknowledge the incredible amount of goodness and beauty that we brought into the world through our struggles? Whether it was our disabled child that we were forced to give them so much love and so much of ourselves, and through that we became a more giving, kinder person. Our financial struggles, and it helped us develop empathy for people who have less. The fact that we lost a loved one and it allowed us to feel other people's pain. I've said this many times, but until my father's death, I couldn't feel the pain of another in a real way. And ever since I could. God created this world that the only way to go to the next level is by falling down in between. I'm not saying that's when my father died. I don't give reasons for why God does what he does, but I'm telling you a fact that if not for that, I would not be able to feel, no matter how many books I read, no matter how many courses I went to. Until you don't taste it, you don't feel it, you're not able to be there. So yes, part one is grieve the life that you don't have, but part two, which is more important than part one, is then go build. Go do something incredible. Go take the empathy you developed and change lives. Give the gift of the learning that you had from your challenges to somebody else. Make art, make poetry, make music, make dance, make something out of your pain that's beautiful, creative, and inspiring. Because that's what Jews do. We take pain and make it beautiful. Can we find meaning in our suffering? There's no question that in the last 4 months, those of us who have found meaning in what we're doing and looking for lessons and messages have been able to stand up taller than those who don't. What is this darkness here to teach me? We have to ask ourselves that question every single day of our lives, but especially now during COVID. What are you here to teach me? Take the COVID at your arm, that's like, metaphorical ball with all those things popping up. Ask yourself, like, COVID, what are you here to teach me? Lockdown, what are you here to teach me? Suffering, what are you here to teach me? Because life is a classroom, and every single moment there's a teacher. Sometimes the teacher is sitting in front of you on a Zoom screen, but that's not most of life. That's not real life. Most of life is teaching you things through a WhatsApp you got, or through the weather outside, or through your beautiful tree shaking back and forth, or through a trauma that you hear about. But life is constantly teaching you lessons. One of the most incredible insights of the Baal Shem Tov is that God is seriously spending the whole day teaching us lessons. He's orchestrating for each and every one of us our universe with the lessons that we need to learn. I need to learn lessons. You need to learn lessons. We have to be able to grow. And sometimes the only way to learn a lesson is to be put in a black room, in a dark room, and be forced to find the lights, find that crack of light. Now life, at least for most of the world, it feels dark. So find a spark. Go find a match. There's something, there's a window in this room. There's something magical waiting to be created out of this. What is it? And I'm not talking about on a global scale. In your life is supposed to be magical, and 2020 was designed not only for all 7 billion of us, it was designed with you in mind, because God in his infinite wisdom could create a world that has every single one of us in mind. And COVID was here for Levi, and COVID was here for you. And it's for me to learn my lessons, and for you to learn your lessons, and to sit and reflect, am I getting it? And we can't go beyond we can't just get stuck in the cliches. You know, I have to be grateful for everything I have, and I love, I realize I love my family. We've said that a million times in the last 4 months. Enough with the cliches. Now what? The real hard lessons, the lessons we don't want to acknowledge. The marriage that needs some serious work. Our relationship with a child that's not so simple and demands that we really dig deep. The fact that we hold grudges for many years and we haven't let go. The real work. The sick, disgusting, painful parts of our heart. The parts that we don't want to acknowledge. The part that makes us feel part that takes us to the lowest place within us. The part that we don't want to admit is in there, because each and every one of us has a dustbin in our heart, has a sewage system in our heart. The parts of the heart that we don't want to go there. The unforgiven variables, the anger, the resentment, whether to parents, whether to teachers, whether to life, whether to circumstances, whether to an ex-husband, whatever. Each and every one of us has those parts in our hearts that we don't want to go there. But maybe now in COVID, it's God coming to you and I saying, go there. Go into that darkness. Go into that manure. Go into the dustbin of your heart and try to clean up that rotten mess. Go there and try to find some meaning. Try to forgive. Try to let go. Try to do the real work of character. Let go of all the anger and frustration and misery in your heart. Forgive. Love. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Be greater than them. Just clean. This year, Rosh Hashanah, we're not going to be in Shul. And this year, Yom Kippur, we're not going to be in Shul. But you know where we're going to be? We're going to be in our house. And we're going to be forced to sit there and doing the al-chet, or the various services, Avinu Malkeinu, and we'll be looking at ourselves and asking a very simple question. Not where's the community, where am I? Where am I? Where am I? Where am I holding? Yes, it was a nice year. I did an extra resolution. I joined a new shir, etc. But did I change? Have I allowed life to change me? Have I allowed the past 4 or 5 months of COVID to transform me? Am I a different person? That's really what not obviously we're the same people, but have I really worked on the deepest parts of my personality, the darkest parts of my personality, the parts I avoid, but I know that's there? Have I worked on it? Am I walking out of COVID a less angry person, less self-righteous, less jealous, less faribaldic? You know, now that we realize, I'll give you an example. We realized how simple bar mitzvahs are, and that technically nobody could fly the weddings, nobody could fly the bar mitzvahs. Can you forgive the person that didn't come to your wedding? In other words, like now that we're just seeing like what really, like life at its most basic form, can we let go of stuff? I'm talking to myself. Just let go. They were wrong, they were right. Let it go. Don't allow that person real estate in your heart. Don't allow the events of your childhood and adulthood to hold your heart back. Flow. For 3 weeks a year, we mourn, we grieve. Then, end of the 3 weeks, God comes and says, okay, now we're going to start repenting. Now we're going to clean ourselves out. Now, once you've gone into the dark place and you've acknowledged all your darkness, now let's do tshuva. Let's repent. Let's clean out. Let's clean out the junk. Clean it out. I'm sure many of you have spent the last 4 months reorganizing your house. It's time to reorganize our heart. Clean it. Go in. Start doing cupboard by cupboard. Just dusting it out. Throwing out all the nonsense. Reorganizing it. Putting love where it belongs. Taking jealousy off the shelf. I pray that we learn from the yahrzeit of tonight. Tonight is the yahrzeit of Aaron HaKohen, Aaron the high priest, who was known as a lover of peace, the brother of Moshe, man of peace. I pray that next week we can dig deep, go to those dark places, but walk out of that, not more bitter, but with more light. Because once and for all, we go there, we acknowledge the pain, and then we let it go. Let it float out. Because we're told that if each and every one of us would bring Geulah, bring redemption, bring Mashiach to our own heart, it would bring it to the world. We don't change the world outside in, we change the world inside out. If I change me, then the world gets changed. Next week, let's change ourselves. Wishing you all a Chodesh Tov, and for next week an easy fast. We're going to hopefully be here before next week, but regardless, easy preparation for the fast. And I look forward to see you tonight.